You unlock this benefit with the key of Patreon. Beyond is another dimension. A dimension of thought. A dimension of speculation. A dimension of mind. You're moving into a land of both waffle and substance. Of things and ideas. You've just crossed into the podcast zone. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Trekking Through the Twilight Zone. This is where Julian and I are working through every episode of the Twilight Zone and giving our opinions on it. And we have come to the last episode of the first season, A World of His Own, in which a playwright is able to create his own characters into reality. And Julian, what did you think about this episode?
I like this episode. It does not amount to a lot, but it's got several things that are very fascinating. I've always liked, I do have this sort of superstitious view that writing somehow affects reality. And I think that all writers have some version of this, that they sort of believe this in the back of their head in one way or another. And then it's got this great meta fictional moment with Rod Serling at the end, which is a throwaway gag, but 50 years ahead of its time. What about you?
Yeah. No, I really like this episode. It was a sort of like, it comes back to this idea of whimsy, and it's not to be taken like seriously. It suffers from a couple of things that I've seen a lot in the series of like the shrewish wife. Which is, I think, is a trope of the era more than anything. But again, the cast in this are actually really good. I like their interaction. I like the twist. I find the twist fun.
Yes.
And that meta ending with Rod Serling was interesting, actually. It was a really funny little moment that I thought was like, that's a fourth wall breaking little thing that I was not expecting. So
it's sort of mind-boggling, right? I mean, it really, and the ending narration, Rod Serling has been revealed as another fictional character. The ending clearly establishes that, obviously there's no Twilight Zone continuity as such, but the idea that if there is, it's Rod Serling narrating, all of this. I mean, the end narration makes it crystal clear that all of the Twilight Zone is, occurring in a microverse inside Gregory West's mind.
Yeah, no, and I love the way even Rod Serling's delivery of that moment when he says, about sort of Gregory West in complete control of the in the Twilight Zone. Apparently, like it's this sort of like, it's even a surprise to Rod Serling. He's like, all right, apparently he's in charge, not me. It made me chuckle. It was a well done ending, because and you know what I'm like. I look at details and I'm like, oh, there's more to this. We'll go through the plot in a second, but there's a moment when I was looking for something extra. We'll save that. We'll get to it. But basically, the plot of this episode is Gregory White is he is a playwright, and it opens with him with a lovely young woman making drinks. They are sort of having a romantic afternoon together, and then at the window of his study, you see a woman dressed fully in black, and it turns out that she is Gregory's wife. And she comes back in and she starts looking for this other woman that we don't know where she's gone. She's hidden. She's gone missing. And his wife starts to accuse him of philandering and adultery. And she's determined to prove that he has been cheating on her. He then declares that he has been cheating on her, in a sense, with a fictional character called Mary. And Mary is someone that he can materialize out of thin air by giving a description of her into his dictaphone. And he can make her come and go. And by to get rid of her, he just cuts the tape out and destroys it. And we find out there are other fictional characters in this world.
I wonder what other characters there are. I mean, because really all we get is Mary, right, who's sort of the mistress. Mm-hmm. And then the twist at the end is, in fact, the wife is herself a creation
Fictional.
who's
Yeah.
right, who's been presumably running for quite some time. But yeah, I mean, I do. Yeah, you said about the shrewish wife. I mean, she's playing the Lois Lane role of like, I'm gonna find out Superman's secret. Which is necessary for the plot, but
it's more than that though, because her leap from, accusing him of adultery to you're talking silly, I'm going to get you committed for the rest of your life so that I
yes,
can enjoy all of your investments, is like that. Like, it
yes,
happens. And I hate that they do this because it's we've had this in several episodes again. We're like, why are you bloody married? Like, you clearly hate each other. At least in this, he admits it. Like, there's this acknowledgement from him when he reveals that she's fictional. He's like, "Yeah, no, I made you what I thought I wanted.
Mhm.
I made you too strong. I made you too, independent and stuff, and those other things." And he sort of acknowledges it, like, I've made you not the nicest person. Like, it's his fault. And so yeah, it's the first time I'm like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Like, it's not blaming the woman for being the shrew sort of character.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like a million women just said, the most unbelievable thing is that he would think that what he wants is a strong woman.
Yeah. Well, no, it's not a strong. He says, I've made you too strong. It's the fact that, like, she clearly is constantly plotting to undermine him.
Oh, yeah.
Which is, that's the problem.
Well, you say, why would you get married? But, I mean, you're not understanding the era. I mean, first of all, love has nothing to do with marriage. And if you can't suffer for the rest of your life with somebody who you slowly grow to hate, then what is marriage about?
that's a depressing thought.
Well, I mean, I would like to think that it's something other than that, but I mean, I do think that there is this sort of, yeah, I mean, she's a shrew, but there is this sort of like, we've been married a while. The love has clearly gone, if there ever was.
But one of the interesting the interesting things about his wife, when we get the reveal that she is also fictional, it's the fact that she did come home early actually surprises him. And he's like, no, this is the first time you've gone against my will and the will of what I've put into you. And he seems kind of interested by that. And I find that really interesting. Like, oh, she's gained a level of sort of like, I don't know, like meta independence. Like, she is now beyond this thing of being a fictional character. Like, she's gained her own reality. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's another story there that would add to the interest to this character, and sort of like how much autonomy do they have? What's life like for her when she leaves the house? How much of her personality did he write, and how much evolved over presumably the years she's been around thinking she's his wife? Has she evolved? I mean, is this the first time that she's ever surprised him or evolved in any way?
Yeah, I know, that's it. Like, it feels like this is another one. We were talking about that with the mannequin one. Like, there's more to this world. I'm like, there's something about this relationship I really want to see. Like, there's something really interested in this that I want to explore. Because the other thing is, let's say he could create anyone, and he does. He creates an elephant in the hallway to stop her.
As one does.
Yeah, as you do. But I like the fact as well that, like, it takes quite a bit for him to tell her that she's fictional, because she's threatening to sort of to leave him. She's threatening to go to a lawyer. She's threatening to have him committed, even when he proves it by having Mary appear and then disappear. Yeah. And we'll get to that moment where Mary clearly is like, "Don't bring me back again." Does she have a continued consciousness?
Yes, I thought about that too. It's sort of like, what is her experience of fading out? Clearly, she's aware that she's faded out lots of times. Does she experience some pain? I mean, the destruction of the tape is done by throwing it in the fireplace. what is going on? What sort of hell does her consciousness go to when it doesn't exist?
Yeah, that's what I want. Like, there's the story where like, he bringing her back, like she slowly degrades each time until she's sort of in some sort of like psychotic rage about being imprisoned in this netherworld because like her consciousness is now about to spring into being. Like, yeah, there's so much more that I would love to explore in this concept. But one of the things is towards the end, he reveals a wall safe.
Mm.
And he pulls out of it an envelope, and on it has his wife's name. And it reveals that she is fictional. The point, and this obviously it comes into the end stinger, but when he takes out that hers, I spotted straight away there's another envelope in there.
Yeah.
And yeah. I didn't know what was coming, but I was like, hang on, he's created he's created other people outside of this relationship. Like they're dropping something in here that's really interesting. Like this is it pays off more at the ending. But again, like I like you, I wonder if there's more of these people that he has created and sent off into the world and stuff. It's fascinating little idea.
Yeah, well, I mean, clearly all of the Twilight Zone episodes are just characters that he's written, right? I mean, he is the sort of stand-in for Serling himself there. He's the writer, the Grant Morrison writer that, Animal Man appears to. And presumably he's written all of those other characters, and all of the faults of the writing then in continuity can be attributed to this specific writer, and they were all deliberate, pointing to the fictional. I'm going too far, aren't I?
No, because this is what I was seriously. This is my head went the same place. I was thinking like I thought of I would say the two great grand wizards of comics, Grant Morrison and Alan Moore. Like they've both made statements alluding to this about how Alan Moore claims to have met John Constantine in a cafe in Northampton. And Grant Morrison has said how when he was writing The Invisibles, how it affected his life, how he had that flesh-eating disease or whatever it was, and sort of how that was affecting King Mob at the same time. Like I've heard
he wrote about writing affecting reality, quite seriously. And Neil Gaiman's also described meeting death and Constantine and a few creepy moments like that.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are others that have done the same. It's weird how they're all sort of like British. That I'm not saying there's anything to us, just that maybe we take ourselves a little serious at times. But
Americans never take themselves seriously.
But I'm sure there are right. Is this a thing? I've never written fiction to the degree that I would say I've created characters that have in my own head a consciousness or a sort of a path of their own. The playwright Gregory White in this, he actually says like, oh yeah, there's been occasions when I'm writing and all of a sudden the character refuses to do things. And I've heard other writers have said this, like, yeah, I was writing this story and it just wouldn't go this way. The characters would drive me a different way. I've never been able to write to that level. And I find that fascinating that this is clearly a state of being that people have achieved.
I mean, I as a writer, I identify and resist those kinds of statements because I totally understand what it's like to hear the voice of a character or to have a character feel utterly real to you. In some sense, I think to be a decent writer, you have to inhabit scenes. I mean, I've been traumatized by things that I've written because I've spent, days killing my baby in my head because it was something a character did, or murdering somebody or something like this. And I'm messed up for how much time I've spent in this action and in this world or this character. Having said that, I think what people are saying is just, it's not that the character's real and they resist. It's just that you get to those moments where the twist is supposed to happen or the character is supposed to do this thing. And you're like, I can't figure out a way to get that in character. I can't, that character is not going to do this, and you're like, okay, well, clearly there's a structural problem with the plot at that point that I have to go back and figure out. To say the character is resisting is that's a way to describe it, right? But it's like saying, evolution wants something. I mean, it's a metaphor.
Yeah.
But literalizing it is fine. I mean, I do think that there's no way that any writer doesn't have some part of their head that sort of, believes this.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. I I've never got that deep into doing fiction that I've ever got to that point. And in all honesty, it would probably scare me a little to do that. One thing I would say is that, because I did really enjoy this episode, we'll get to this, and so we'll call on the stinger in a moment. But one of the things is, and he calls out about how the point of what his ability is, the ability to describe these people in such detail in a way that makes them real. However, when he gives the description, it's like a police report.
Mm-hmm.
It's a blonde woman. She's 5'6". She's wearing a blouse, and I'm like, this isn't the kind of description that inhabits a reality or is ingrained into some sort of like meta-fictional sort of narrative. It's the one down point of this story that really bothered me. There was like the ability to his descriptive ability wasn't great.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I have mixed views about that. I mean, I think it goes on, right? But it's also so shot through with sort of playwriting sensibilities of that era. I mean, the way he describes her is so shot through with the era's pejorative language and, sort of the way a woman would be described. It's a very sexist, he
describes her as plain, like the Mary character that he wants to spend his time with is like, because he describes his wife as regal and beautiful and perfect, and she's a attractive woman, but then he's like, I'm done with stunning beauty. I want someone plain and humble, and you're just like, why not just go out and meet someone then?
I don't know. Yeah, it's very. But I think that this part of the problem, like for me, I'm more bothered by that whole process and the fact that he's got to use a dictaphone in order to make it audio, right? And because he can write something. I've seen this story before where it's written on a piece of paper and you can throw the piece of paper in the fire too. But it's like, okay, so it's 1960, technology's changed, and the dictaphone lets you voice this. I guess you could do a voiceover anyway, but I mean, that's a clever idea, but his description it's like no matter how detailed the plot makes it, no description in a minute is going to feel so powerful that it brings somebody into being, right? It's writing a novel, it's writing the entire play, it's that kind of thing. And I think that it just feels too easy. And there's no way around the fact that it feels too easy.
No, I almost wish, and this would both be a good and a bad, but like I almost wish it was a magic dictaphone.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is the Twilight Zone dictaphone.
Right. Whatever I speak into here becomes reality. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. No, that works. I mean, but then it's not a metaphor for writing as much, and the swirling sort of thing at the end.
Yeah, and I'm willing to give it the description thing because, like I say, because it runs at such a pace. It's only a short episode. It's obviously a 26-minute episode, and you do get the great stinger at the end where Rod Serling appears on his desk to give that exiting narration. And I think, okay, this is him exiting. I honestly thought, like, having never seen this and not knowing a great deal, he's exiting the season. This is him appearing on screen for his exit. And then when Gregory White says, "Oh, no, hang on," and stops him. And then goes to the wall safe and pulls out an envelope with Rod Serling written on it. Like, I was like, that's pretty ballsy for a 60s TV, an early 60s TV show.
No, I feel the same way. I mean, I love that moment. And I do find myself wondering how, like, our reception of this is different. Not only because these are preserved forever, and we grow up hearing about the Twilight Zone is influential and good, and then going back, you have to remember it was written to be disposable, but also because Serling was doing product placement in the middle of these episodes. So, there are segments that we don't include in these episodes anymore, where it's like, as instead of the present day long commercials, there's Serling saying, what I like is, Winston cigarettes, or whatever. And then there's the, and then, the only cigarette you can smoke in the Twilight Zone, and, I mean, that was just a fact of how you did these things. And then also the sort of, as you pointed out, the sort of next episode closing narrations. So you would have, as a viewer at the time, been more used to seeing Serling kind of popping up, and being on screen more than we are with the way we watch these now.
No, that's a really good point. I suppose he would have been more of a visual presence than so much. Yeah, that would make. I'm assuming that would actually probably have more impact as well. Then, where you're like, oh, he's a fictional character, like because I just know him as an individual because of this show and stuff, and I could see how that could play out.
And usually in the versions that we have that have been passed down, he just shows up at the beginning on screen for half a minute and then disappears, and the ending narration is always, I don't know that does he appear on screen in other episodes, or do we just get the voiceover ending?
I think he's appeared in a couple, not often, just a couple. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's rare for us to see him at the end, even though it doesn't feel rare, right? It feels like it works.
Yeah. Like he's got that very distinctive voice that rings throughout the episodes. Anyway, any final thoughts about A World of His Own?
No, it's good fun. It's not a 10 out of 10 or something, but it's good fun, and that metafictional conceit at the end, is one for the history books. What about you?
Yeah, no, it's good. It's an enjoyable episode. It's a good sort of like little stinger for the end of the season. Again, like all of these, like I like the setup. Often the cast are usually pretty good, and the way they're shot, it's like a play. This is all done in one room as well. I should just highlight, because the one thing I noted is it's about a playwright and it's set up like a play. So I really enjoyed that. Like there's not multiple scenes. It's all in one room. It's locked off. It's very clever. So it feels well. This feels more well thought out than some of the ones we've talked about recently. So no, I really enjoyed this as an ender. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there we are. We are now at the end of season 1 of The Twilight Zone. I hope you've enjoyed it, and we're going to cap off this with a sort of a season recap and a quick chat through. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much, and we shall talk to you on the next episode.